This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. Igniting the fire within you. Exalting the melody of freedom. These are the things that will bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Down, down, down.
Let me tell you, it's in the air. Joy is in the air. Love is in the air. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Don't sleep on it, brother. You might get left, sister. Can you feel it? What it feel like? Freedom. What it feel like? Justice. No need to be counted, cause I am down. Down, down, down. Down, down, down. Down for the end of racism, for the end of bigotry, cause I am down. For the end of misogyny, that's right. For all the isms out there, just down, down, down. Let's bring it down. Rise up, people. No more foolishness, and let's bring it way down.
Riding the river of change into the cries of contrition. This is the way that we bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. We are the children of Eden, dancing and celebrating freedom. We are the ones that must bring it down. Down, down, 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 down. So gather the faithful. Tell everyone to stand and shout loud. Shout loud. Shout loud. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it down, down. Let's bring it down. Let's bring it way down. Let's bring it down. We've got to bring it down. Down. Stand up and shout. Stand up and shout. Rise together.
Accountability starts now. The Eric Dawson Radio Show.
Yeah. Rise up. Stand up, shouting loud.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up.
Stay the at home. The Rona is spreading. is no joke. It's no time to work or roam. The way you can fight it is simple, my friends. Just stay the at home. Now, technically, I'm not a doctor, but mother listen when I read a poem. So here I am, Sam Jackson, imploring you, keep your ass at home. If you want things to get back to normal, don't panic. Just use your dome. Wash your hands, stop touching your face, and stay the at home. Motherfucker, it's no time to gamble. Look around, you're not at a casino. Just stay the home as if your name was Trenton Quarantino. Sure, you can still see your friends. Use the mother app on your phone. But unless you just ran out of groceries, please stay the at home. Thank you for doing your part to flatten the curve, because that is steep. And now that you're home, please feel free to go the to sleep. The end.
Good morning. Welcome to another episode of the Eric Dawson Radio Show. Hey, Diane.
Hey, good morning.
It's Thursday.
Yes.
And Diane's in her Democrat blue. Uh-oh.
Don't tell him. Don't tell him.
And we got Vincent Squire on the phone hailing from Camden County, South Jersey. U.S. senatorial candidate running against Cory Booker, and there are a couple other candidates running too, aren't there, Vincent?
Yes, there are.
Maybe not worth mentioning though.
Hey, Vincent, are they planning to do a debate or anything, or are they just going to let us free fall out there and just vote?
Nothing's going to move until after the primaries. Nobody's doing the political primary debates because, there's a level of safety. But a lot of candidates are doing their town halls, which consist of cronyism.
Well, why can't they do a debate like they did in...
not like, but...
Well, in terms of the technology, like they did in Orange. Using Zoom or something like that.
Why they can't do it online?
Yeah.
Oh, you know what? They can do it online.
They can.
They just have to have somebody to host it.
We'll host it.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Well, you know what? But maybe they won't let us host it since Vincent co-hosts the show here.
Well, we'll have to dump him then.
Yeah, Vincent, you'd have to.
Way to show your support.
Well, look, I'm neutral.
We got to be, we got to be bipartisan here.
Yeah.
But we would host it. I would love to have our audience get an opportunity to, ask questions of you. I mean, they can ask questions now of you, but to ask questions of Senator Booker as well as the other candidates who won't be named on this show unless they show up on the show.
Right. But see, when you get the audience to ask questions of you, there are two types of audience that you get. You get those who like you and those who don't. Those who like you will support your position, but those who don't will get on there and just spread all kinds of lies.
Yeah, but we talked about that, and I'm telling you, once you recognize that they're a liar and they don't want to change, they don't want to reform, you've got one or two choices. You could waste your time that you could never get back trying to do the impossible, or you can just let them die so that you can live to fight another day.
So in the feed, Eric, Brian Powers says he wants to do a shameless plug for the Green Party and MJRR.
Wait a minute. Well, tell Brian to call in.
That's what I told him. Call in.
Call in, Brian.
Shameless plugs over here.
He can call in and do a shameless plug.
That's right.
Call in, and you know what?
Just man up.
Yeah, and then the other thing, Brian, is if ever you need to plug something, because I appreciate what it is that you guys are doing there at Revolution Radio. Send me the artwork, and I'll try to add it to the rotation of our advertising here. I have no problem doing that at all. Listen, there are a couple things that I want to talk about, and there's some things that we can talk about in general. One, I posted, a question about our special needs students in the age of COVID-19. We talk about the educational hurdle. We talk about the disparity in education in urban schools versus suburban schools. Diane, Vincent, we've talked about how more affluent school communities have access to technology that poor communities don't have access to, and so they're at a deficit. But then when you dig deeper into that, those who are special needs are at even a bigger deficit. And how is that being addressed? So I posted that to see what kind of comments would come through the thread, and I want to have a conversation about that. But before I move on to the itinerary, I think this might be my man Brian. Brian, is that you?
Of course, brother. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, brother. How are you?
Here, so everybody can. All right, there we go. That's better stuff. I'm doing good, man. We're staying safe over here. Doing some mutual aid work, helping get food at people that are hungry.
Okay.
And getting ready for the Green Party convention this weekend.
Now, where's the Green Party convention going to be held?
It's going to be online. There's a Zoom room that registered Greens and people that pay dues. You're a member of the Green Party just by being a registered Green. There's 10,000 of us in the state of New Jersey, a little bit more even. And, you just got to go. There's a website and there's some links. And I'll be putting them out today on New Jersey Revolution Radio. You can visit the Green Party of New Jersey's Facebook page. If you want to come to the convention. If you can't come to the convention because you're not a registered member or whatever, you can still watch the convention online. We'll be streaming it on New Jersey Revolution Radio, plus the various platforms that we put out on. So you can check us out this weekend. It starts Saturday at 1 p.m. and I'll be talking later tonight with Craig Cayetano, who's one of the 3 co-chairs of the party, about the upcoming convention.
Hey, Brian. Explain to people what the Green Party is, because some people still are unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, I appreciate that a lot, because I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about what the Green Party is. The Green Party in New Jersey, and I'll just focus on what the Green Party in New Jersey does, because that's been my experience. I was on the executive council of the Green Party in New Jersey for about 3 or 4 years in various positions. We're mainly, I would consider us an activist group that uses politics as a platform for social change. We do have an elected office holder on the school board in Brick Township. Craig Cayetano made a great run for city council in Hawthorne. But we're not like the Democrats or Republicans. We don't hold a lot of offices. We don't have a lot of electoral power, and we're honest about that. But what we do would get ourselves involved with politics is a political party completely disconnected from systems. And I think a lot of people feel on the Democratic Party or progressive ends feel like, that Greens have the same politics as Democrats, so why don't you just join the Democratic Party and advocate for their positions that you all agree? That's a patently false statement. Greens have their own politics. It's based on the 10 key values, the 4 pillars and the 10 key values. And if you read up on them, they include nonviolence, anti-racism, gender equity, an end to all the wars, and numerous other things that the Democratic Party has stood, quite frankly, against in most circumstances for a long time. Our political influence doesn't come from holding office. Our political influence comes from basically being a threat to the Democratic Party. That if they keep fucking up, we're going to come back and steal some of that power because we have the right narrative. So they do steal our narrative all the time, and they get away with it after 30 years. But the problem is they don't deliver on policy. And when I'm seeing people start to come to consciousness now after this Bernie campaign, you can put all this energy, you can put all this passion, you can put all this... And I saw it, honestly, for 4 years, and I was crying and lamenting and aggravated and angry at times even, because I was telling people they were wasting their fucking time. Come to the Green Party. Build something with me. And right now, I'm sorry to be that gloating douche, but you know what? I told you all so. And if I hadn't put that energy into Bernie, we could imagine the Green Party we could have right now in the state. Imagine the third party power we could have in the state of New Jersey. Imagine it on a national basis. But while you kicked and screamed and demanded that everybody get in line with the Democratic Party, you wasted your time, and we did. And we've been built, and we've got strong leadership there. We've got a great little core of activists that work around the state, we're heavily involved in mutual aid networks that are feeding people right now. We're involved in political education. We've founded a
coalitions. We've been involved in minimum wage movements and environmental movements.
So let me ask you a question.
I love the Bernie supporters. I'll wrap it up here.
No. I don't want you to wrap it up.
I want you to join us. But y'all were fucking around while we were doing that.
But Brian, here's the question that I have for you, right? Because you put a lot on the table in terms of what the Green Party is involved in. And sometimes you can spread yourself too thin, right? And so, one of the things that I think would begin to weaken the current power structure is to focus on term limits. I think if there's a concerted effort on term limits, that could be the thing that begins to unravel or loosen the hold that these two parties currently have on politics here in New Jersey. And I'm always interested. I did a walk the walk a couple of years ago, right, Diane? And we walked the community and we talked to folks. We did it 10 weeks, and we talked to them, and probably 95% of the people were for term limits. But there's no real organization around getting that on the ballot, right? So that people can vote for term limits. And so so all of the other things, I'm not disagreeing that all of those other things are useful, but I think if you were to take maybe the top 2 things or 3 things and say, if we focus on these 3 things, we can begin to weaken the power structure, right? We can loosen their grip, and then we can begin to fold in these other things as well.
What you do weaken when you do that is cronyism, because these people have been in power for so long, they gain more power and more influence against people who they need to be fighting against. So weakening that cronyism gives us an opportunity to get more things on the platform and a fresh look at solving some of these old problems that we consistently deal with.
Yeah, I think that. I think that might be part of the puzzle, but I don't know. I honestly, man, I just think that's too small of a step. I think we're way beyond just trying to get a electoral tweak like that. I don't necessarily disagree, but I'm more the lines of a general strike right now rather than doing electoral.
Oh no, listen, I don't disagree with a general strike either.
I think that's an example. When you said you spread yourself too thin, I don't know. I think that might be an example of an issue that should be a little bit. In the I don't want to say maybe in the future, maybe once we establish a little bit of a better base that actually understands revolutionary activity, understands what changing society through dialectics really means. I mean, there's a lot of political education that goes into the kind of scale of change that I think we need. I shouldn't say we want, that we need, right? And I think that starts with a bigger step than that. I would say, from the Green Party, I know the Green Party, although it's not been my particular issue, there are a number of members of the Green Party that fight for ranked choice voting. And I actually believe Andrew Zwicker proposed a ranked choice voting bill in New Jersey. It didn't get any notice or traction or anything, of course not, because of the way New Jersey functions, it doesn't. But, I mean, I would say that ranked choice voting, when we're talking about Green Party platforms, has been more of a focus than term limits. Although I don't exclude it. Sure, you want to talk about it?
Yeah. No. I'm down for ranked choice voting as well, and I'm down for most of the things that you talked about. I'm just saying, where do you start? Like, I think it's difficult to start everywhere, right?
Okay. I'll tell you where you start. You start by checking out the Green Party convention, the New Jersey Green Party convention at 1 p.m. this weekend. On Twitter or Facebook or wherever it can be found, on New Jersey Revolution. That's where you can start. And then take it from there. And take that political education or whatever information you take away from things outside of the establishment and start to think outside of electoral politics. Because I think that a better world, it just doesn't start with electoral reform. I think that's a part of it. Don't discount it. On the peaceful revolution.
Right. On a peaceful revolution, if you do not have a candidate, if you do not have a candidate for a particular slot, do you endorse candidates that are not Green Party but have a great deal of the ideology?
Yes, we will. Well, I don't want to, by the way, I'm not a member of the Green Party Executive Council anymore, so when I say we, I'm just referring to my party that I'm a member of. We will endorse independent candidates, other third-party candidates, to endorse Socialist Party candidates, and others to come in. And generally it happens like when people come in late to the game, they may run as an independent, put their name on the ballot or whatever, and then they say, oh, Greens are here, can you give us some support? And if we're aligned, we might send them a couple of bucks and see what we can do to support them, through grassroots activity. But, in general, and I always advocate, my purpose is that you should come up to the party and understand the party's politics. Because, again, like I said, they're different. So if people hop on board late, or if, say, a Democrat, and we've had Democrats and progressive Democrats, people involved with Democratic Party ask us for endorsements, and we turn them down. We just say, no, you come from a background that's not our politics. It's not an offense, but, hang out with us, organize with us, understand what our politics mean, and when you can project that as a candidate, then, we're more than willing to endorse you, hit you a couple door knockers, and do whatever we can on a limited basis, because people do have to understand, we are small, and we understand that we're a small party, but we're passionate, and quite frankly, we're right. So,
all right. Well, listen,
I have one more question for you. So is the Green Party the same as the Independent Party? Because when I think of the Green Party, I'm thinking of white hippies and stuff like that. So I'm still kind of confused, and I think people don't quite understand. Is it the same? And if it's not, then what's the difference? And the other thing is there a place for Black Americans in New Jersey in the Green Party?
So I would say that your perception is accurate. I being a white hippie, would say that that's not an entirely inaccurate perception of the history of the Green Party, and it's unfortunate. And over the last, I would say, I don't know, I can't tell it because it's an evolutionary. That problem has been recognized not only here in New Jersey, but on a national basis. And things don't change overnight. And much like we talk about changing the Democratic Party from the inside, there's been efforts to change the Green Party from the inside. But I think that those efforts have been successful, whereas the Democratic Party change efforts have been failed, because the Green Party ain't a very powerful party. But, when those of us that are communist, anarchist, socialists, the more left in New Jersey and nationally came into executive boards and things like that, we have been able to influence the party. And so I think it did start with the base of well-meaning white people making a lot of mistakes as they tried to integrate other cultures into our party. But thanks to the efforts of people like Margaret Kimberly and others on Black Agenda Report, there's been a number of training and a number of sensitivity issues and a number of political explosions within the Green Party that nobody's ever going to know about, but it's evolved. And we are proud to support and do anything for anyone that carries, the monikers, social justice, racial equality, gender equality, all those things. I'm not saying it's happened overnight. I'm not saying this party still doesn't have a few problems on a national level, but I think in New Jersey, we're starting to see a party that is becoming integrated and is more in tune with Black Lives Matter. We unapologetically support Black Lives Matter. We unapologetically support the plight of the Palestinian people. We unapologetically support the right of a woman to choose.
Well, here's the question I have for you, Brian. Brian. Here's the question I have for you. What are you guys doing for outreach? So if you recognize what Diane is saying to be true, what are you guys doing in terms of outreach to be more inclusive of those groups that you currently don't include?
Yeah, I think it started with that educational process, but I think we're seeing real material results now at this stage of development in the Green Party. These mutual aid networks are developing community ties with people that are negatively affected by capitalism, and that reaches across a spectrum of people. So it's not just that white hippie crowd. I think that we did have roots in. And I think that what I'm seeing right now through mutual aid networks, through our other political endeavors, through the minimum wage movement, 1550 now is totally supported by Greens. Democrats didn't give a shit about that, and all they did was fuck it up, right? And Greens were there the whole time. And I think through those efforts, that's the outreach. It's It's that coalition building. It's that being in the streets with other groups of people. It's that talking to progressive Democrats that are coming over. It's talking more honestly to people that aren't into politics, people that aren't us. Because we're a little fucked up from being into politics. I hope everybody understands that. Not everybody's into politics. And so we, as political people, have this jaded view of society. And when you get outside that bubble, and you talk to people that just aren't politically engaged, those are far easier conversations to have than they are with somebody who's already politically engaged and has that prejudice. And so I think that's the outreach there, is concentrating on people that aren't politically engaged and see what the problems are with capitalism.
All right.
So, Brian, make sure you put your information in the feed so people know how to get to the event that you guys are going to be having at 1 p.m., okay?
I thank you so much for the opportunity to shamelessly plug all our endeavors over here. You do great work. I know we disagree here and there, but Eric, I do appreciate you. You stay safe, keep educating your communities, and I'll talk to you soon. All right? I'll see you at the convention on Saturday, right?
Absolutely. I'll be there.
Peace.
Thank you. So, listen, I like the work that they're doing, and it's interesting because when Brian says, and I know we hadn't planned to talk about this, but, when you say that you have 10,000 people, that's not small. And I'm going to explain to you why it's not small. Newark is the largest city in the state of New Jersey. Jersey City is the second largest city in the state of New Jersey. Newark's budget for education for the school is $1 billion, right? The municipal budget is $700-800 million, right? The housing authority, I don't know what their budget is, but then let's go to Jersey City. So let's talk about all of that money. Let's talk about all of that political influence between Jersey City and Newark in terms of how it impacts New Jersey. If the Green Party, with their 10,000 members, descended on Newark and on Jersey City to reshape politics, it would be huge. So when they say, and I'll tell you this too, the mayor seat out of almost 300,000 residents, I don't know how many registered voters, but the mayor wins with fewer than 25,000 votes. The council seat, the largest ward in the city, won with fewer than 3,000 votes. And when you talk about the greatest, prior to COVID-19, and I'm not saying that the current council person is responsible for it, but the greatest economic boom is happening in the Central Ward. Look at what's going on there. And that person, who was the council person, won with fewer than 3,000 votes.
Mm-hmm.
You've got other wards in the city that win with fewer than 2,000 votes. So if you were to drop 10,000 strong from the Green Party and said, you know what? And this is what I'm saying about biting off a lot, right? So if you want to be influential, maybe you look and say, hey, if we attack the largest city in the state of New Jersey and we brought to bear on that city and those elections, our ideology, right, and our manpower, right, we can reshape politics in the largest city in the state of New Jersey and then go to the second largest city in the state of New Jersey, then go to the third largest city in the state of New Jersey. But when you spread out so far and so wide, the changes you make are more glacial, right?
And maybe you need to be on that executive board and start talking to them.
Well, look, I'm going to attend the meeting, and I'll make some suggestions. But I'll tell you, listen, because I would say that the Green Party is a special interest group, right? They have their interests. But do you know what happens in North Jersey politics? I don't know about South Jersey, Vincent. I know Norcross pretty much runs what happens down there, right? But in a lot of cities here in North Jersey, you have unions. The CWA will drop in, and they'll drop 50 workers to go knock on doors in an election, and they will completely shift the balance of that election by putting 50 boots on the ground. So if you're telling me that you got 10,000 people
across the state, are you
across the
kidding me?
state? Can you imagine if you equaled what the CWA drops on the ground and started knocking on doors around issues?
The Democratic Party would lose their
They
mind.
lose their mind. Can you imagine? Can you imagine
they wouldn't
if
be able to pull out enough people? Because remember, the Democratic Party is made of a bunch of older people too. So them older people ain't gonna be knocking on those doors like that.
right? Can you imagine if you had a major recruiting effort? And again, I'm just saying one time. Listen, the Board of Education. Candidates for the Board of Education win with fewer than 3,000 votes. And they sit on top of a $1 billion institution.
That's right.
So imagine if the Green Party said, you know what? We're going to take that over. Right? We're going to take that over.
We want that.
We want that. Now you got a platform in the largest city in the state of New Jersey, the largest school district in the state of New Jersey, managing a $1 billion budget, talking about your ideology. Yeah, I'm going to attend that meeting. Because I think that you guys, I think that focus is necessary, right? Passion is good, but focus is necessary.
What say you take them out one by one?
Yeah.
You don't take them all out at the same time, one by one.
Oh, yeah,
That's
right.
how they've done in other towns. They pick them off one by one.
Listen, and prioritize. When you play chess, you can only move one piece at a time. You can't move multiple pieces. And when you move those pieces, the good chess players at least, are moving the pieces based on a strategy, right? One piece at a time, but based on a strategy of development and support and attack.
So someone in the feed said, I knew ADOS of the show was only a moment, not a movement.
Say what?
ADOS of this show was only a moment, not a movement.
Oh, no, that's not true. And I don't know who said that, but it is a movement. So there are other things, right? I could walk and chew gum at the same time. So outside of here, there are people that, in fact, I had a conversation just the other day. And whoever that is, I'm not in the feed. Maybe let me see if I can get in the feed. But whoever it is,
just comment.
whoever it is, you're welcome to inbox me. If you want to be involved in what we're doing, then you're welcome to get involved. One of the things that I talked about was the apparel that I created for ADOS, using it as a fundraising mechanism to be able to raise money and send Black children to the Museum of African American History, right? And so you can purchase a hat, this beautiful dad hat that I got on, or I got sweatshirts, I got long sleeve shirts, I've got t-shirts, I've got backpacks. Then you can purchase them. You can talk to other people about purchasing them. Percentage of those proceeds will go toward doing that. If you are social media savvy, you can help me build a GoFundMe page. I've been looking for somebody to help me do that so that we can use that as a mechanism of raising some money. I also acquired the domain, the 1619group.com, which is going to be a place where we can deposit information around 1619 and around foundational Black Americans, American descendants of slavery. If you are a writer and you want to contribute content, or you want to help us to curate content that we can post there. See, so there's a lot going on. So inbox me. I'm waiting. see, and I don't know who did that, right? But all they need to do is inbox me and say, hey, what's happening? But when you put something in a thread like that, I get aggy. Is that the word? I get a little aggy. Yeah. Because just inbox me.
I don't know if you get aggy. You get defensive.
No, but I do. Because you could just inbox me and say, hey, man, I know you were doing some ADOS stuff. What's happening with that? Is there any way that I can get involved? But when you try to call me out, I got to respond. anyway. Buy
No, we
buy
talking about
shirt.
special education. Special education.
Yes. How are we? So, ADOS. I mean, not ADOS. ADD. Or you've got what were the other things we were talking about before the show? Autism, right? And in these classrooms, Diane, these classrooms are fitted both with technology and or additional personnel to address the specific needs of these children. And now these children are home with parents who lack the skill to be able to work with them. And I don't know. I know Principal Kafele commented, and I would love if he would call in. He's such a brilliant mind. Or anybody else, either a parent or guardian of a student with special needs or an educator. And you may want to be anonymous, which is really cool, right? That we can do that. But talk to us about what you see going on, because what I see is that these students are going to be at a major deficit, if not already, because they're not being considered in this whole thing.
Yeah, there's a lot going on with that. Differences of what they're doing in charter schools as what they're doing in public schools, as what they're doing in functioning schools and non-functioning schools. So I'll put it that way, because even in the public schools, they haven't actually addressed how they're educating students who are not on the spectrum, who are not having any other learning challenges. So they're having issues just with those students who don't have those issues. I know I was talking to a friend in West Orange, and she was saying her daughter was just getting information through the computer. The teacher would send it through Google assignments. They would have the assignment for the day, and then they were responsible to pretty much read, educate themselves, and send back their work at the end of the day. And of course, those students were starting to fall through the cracks because they weren't doing the work, and they're not used to doing, independent work like a college student or a high school student may be. So that's one issue with that. Then I spoke to, on the other end, there was actually a friend of mine who was on Facebook, and she was chronicling her autism challenge with her son and what was going on with her in school. And I think it went into, maybe she made it up to the third week, and she has two children, and by the third week she was like, I can't do this. This is like impossible. Now, the other thing is, I read an article in the Star Ledger, and I'll pull it up after this to let you know. There was a community, a school that I want to say it's in Passaic County, technical school, where they deal with children who have challenges. And they were doing face-to-face one-on-ones with them to make sure that they were still continuing to have their occupational therapy and that they were having their class sessions. But they also had a smaller group of kids they were dealing with. So while you're dealing with maybe a traditional class size of 30, they're dealing with maybe 7 or 8 students. Then I read some other stuff with another friend whose son lives in a group home, and his educational difficulties that he's having, because he has autism as well, and what he's dealing with at the group home while they're trying to keep them safe, because he had a sickness at one time, flu at one time, and then also educate them at the same time. So it's very challenging, especially in a group home, because you have a transition of workers that come in, some that stay and sleep there over a period of couple of days, and then it turns over to another couple of people. So there's a transition of that's going on. So it's a lot of stuff that's happening with traditional kids, especially read more with special needs kids, because they can't get out. And when we talk about, you and I, Eric, we're living in New Jersey, and we're in a house, and we can move from upstairs to downstairs to the basement, and we have several rooms to move around. They're talking about other families who are constricted to maybe 3 or 4 rooms, and they're in an apartment building. So they don't have the luxuries of going into the backyard or sitting on the front porch or hanging out in the driveway. They're literally like looking out the window like they're locked up. literally like a prison for the children as well as for the parents. You know, their only outing. I was talking to my cousin. She said, "I've never been so excited to go to the grocery store." She was like, "This is like my thing now."
Yeah, it's going to be challenging, and I don't know what statistics are really out there that are going to be that are going to measure, the impact that this is having. Make no mistake, these kids, these students are in trouble.
And then, then there was another article I read, I want to say maybe yesterday or Sunday, it was in the Star Ledger, and they talked about CASA, which is court-appointed special advocates for children. And they talked about, I want to say it was Bergen and Passaic County that has an organization that they work and they mentor kids. But they're mentoring kids that are in foster care, mentoring kids that have been maybe still with their families but need advocacy. And they talked about how it was difficult for them to adjust, but they definitely made the biggest effort to make sure they stayed in contact with their mentees so that they felt like they weren't left out of, because this is going on with everybody else, that they weren't being pushed aside. So one lady told about her story that she was a mentor to a 6 and an 8-year-old, and she had been in their lives for 2 years, and how she does FaceTime with them and Zoom, and she plays doll babies with them, and she does games with them to kind of help keep them at a semi-normal state of mind, because for them, it's very difficult to, one, be in foster care and to be away from your family, and then 2, not be able to be in touch with the mentor or that you've been in regular contact with physically, going out and doing stuff with on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. So there's a lot of kids that are really suffering because of this.
Sure. And so,
what you find out is that, see, first, I'm a firm believer that the first teacher and the best teacher that the child will ever have is its parent. And because of the distancing, the parents are getting a little frustrated because they don't have an outlet or a break away from the children. And that's where all the problems come into place. But if it's done right, I mean, this child can not only keep up with the work, but if the parent really gets into the child and find ways to connect, to express, or get them to learn properly, these children do have an opportunity to excel. They've got a great deal of attention that they can use. And I think that program that you were talking about, Diane, is perfect because it does give the parents an outlet. And by the way, my wife is one of those people who gets really excited when it's time to go shopping.
Yeah. So Principal Kafele says regarding special needs students in education, he says, education has come to a screeching halt for so many young people, and many of those young people are our special needs population. He said it's such a horrible time that we're in. So there's where we are. And so if we recognize, and so again, I don't know who the person is who's in the thread. Diana can't get in the feed. But regarding ADOS, right, it is more than just a symbol, right? It is a focus. And so the focus is on, if they're doing bad, we're always doing worse, right? So that's where I am in the way that I deal with this. And what I would say is this, to whoever it is, get involved, right? What is your level of participation and involvement? I show up, and maybe they are. I don't know who it is, but right. But get involved. Call me, right? So
I have my daughter here, and she wants to give some input on SPED and what's going on in, I guess, particularly her school system, what's happening in New York City. And how kids are being educated, or if they're losing out on what's
she's going to call in and talk about that?
She's right here, standing right here.
Is she going to get, wait. Is she going to get on camera? Oh,
I know.
Diana.
He sees you.
I see you. everybody else sees you too. So yeah, I would love it if you could weigh in and let us know, how this whole thing is happening. And again, speak generally about education, but I'm always focused on how Black kids are doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking like a little Diane.
It's hard. Like even right now, I'm got a 15-minute break between sessions with kids, and some kids are responding better than others, but some kids are just not adjusting. And you have parents sitting with them trying to help it, and it's just not working for some kids. And it's interesting. In my school, we're starting our reading assessments next week, and so being on the team, I drafted a letter for our parents, who are now our parent co-teachers, about how to just make sure that we're having some testing protocols so that they're not over-helping their students so that we can get the most accurate data as possible. Because as you know, some schools are making decisions what's best for their communities, but we still have to make, decisions around retention or promotion for next year, based off of students' performance before we let out for Corona, and even when it comes to special education, all my students are still receiving their services. The speech services are being received over Google Meets due to HIPAA concerns and privacy concerns. They're receiving occupational therapy and physical therapy as well. The providers have been working tirelessly with parents to figure out what things they have in their houses to help with the sessions. But again, there's some students who just aren't responding well. So even though they worked well with them in school, it's proving difficult over the computer. Like I have one student who just has not completed any of his physical therapy sessions because he just refuses to come to the computer. Then we have counseling that's still happening at my school. We have both informal and formal counseling. Unfortunately, though, that has to be on the phone, and it's actually not being labeled as counseling. Instead, it's being labeled as like a check-in because of privacy concerns, and you don't know who's around or who's recording or who's listening in. So it's not even a technical counseling session. It's just hey, how are you doing? Let's do an activity to talk freely about different things. We're still holding special education meetings about reviewing a student's IEP. Any new cases cannot be opened only because we can't test over the computer yet. But any cases that don't need additional testing, we are going forward with those meetings. So what do you mean by case? So like if a student, if a parent has a concern and they want to refer their student for special education, normally we would start that process. They would undergo certain testing like a psychoeducational evaluation. They would do a speech evaluation. If there's other concerns, we would do evaluations to speak to that. But since all of that requires in-person contact, that's all on hold until we reopen schools. So right now, if a student doesn't need any testing because they already have an IEP, we just want to change things, we can do that. But we can't really add anything because it's not possible.
This is a mess.
Now you're working in what state are you in? I'm in Brooklyn, New York.
This is a mess.
What they're finding out with the testing going on is it's more about the children's reaction now to this pandemic. You're finding that some children are doing a lot more working with their parent than they are with their teacher. And on the other hand, you're finding out a lot more children are doing worse working with their parent.
I don't think it's a matter of better or worse. I think it kind of depends on the student, right? It depends on the relationship, and it depends on their effort and focus level. So our sessions are 40 minutes. The kids that we're working with are 5, 6, and 7 years old. So it also looks very different than a middle school would or a high school would. And also, like, it's very often that you have students who perform better in school, and then like when it gets time to go home and do the homework, they act like they don't know it. So that really isn't a fair question because it just depends on the person. It depends on the student. It depends on the relationship with the parent and the child. Also, parents aren't trained teachers, right? So as soon as the child gets it wrong, you know, you see the meme on Facebook that says, what's 5 plus 3? What's 5 plus 3? And they keep saying the same thing louder and louder, like they're just going to make the kid get it. But it's not. That's not how it works.
So what tips do you have for parents to get the children more engaged?
I would say to definitely connect with your child's teacher, to ask them specific prompts and things that you can do at home to support in their lesson, but also to reinforce these skills during homework or practice. I think most importantly to all parents, extend grace to educators. Like, this is new to us. Everyone is trying. This is not the time to be judging an educator based on, you know, how they're delivering material or anything like that. It's really, it puts everybody in a very vulnerable situation, right? Because you have to put yourself out there. You have your house in the background. We have at my school, we started something called Snack and Chats on Friday because the students were missing each other. So you just give them social time, mostly for kids who don't have siblings at home. And you'll see the children on the snack and chat, on the video chat, and then you'll see parents in the back arguing and all. Like, it's really fun, the things that you see on the video chat that people think you can't see. So I think the most important thing is just to extend everyone grace, to realize that some days, today might be a bad day. Like, today is not a good day for me in teaching, but every other day is usually good. So you know, you want some
every other day.
Well, I appreciate that insight. We get caught up sometimes, Diana, in our own issues, the things that we're dealing with, and we're not paying. You know, everybody's talking about the economy, whether it's going to open or not. We're talking. Vince and I were talking earlier about depression, and we were also talking about. And I want to spend some time talking about this too, Diane, later on. Domestic violence. Those numbers are up. You know, right now. And so folks are dealing with all those things, but you know, we still have to spend the proper amount of time focusing on these children because they need to be educated, and Black ones in particular.
So I have a question for you before you go off your break. Do you see with coronavirus and how we're handling education that this may be something in elementary school that we may be moving forward to do more of? Or we may be extending the school year so we can add in this as a supplement to help kids? I mean, it's hard. Like, I teach at a school that majority of my kids qualify for free and reduced lunch. I think when we talk about integrating this stuff into the normal school year, it's hard because we had a lot of hiccups in the beginning of the year because we have many kids that's in shelters. We have many kids whose parents are essential workers, so they can't really support them because they're at home with grandparents who are just there to watch. It's really hard for them to support anything else.
Right.
We have, it's just so much other stuff going on that it would be hard to think that we would move to a model that's strictly, distance learning, especially since, like, a big part of elementary school, like, we love on our kids a lot. Like, even before we let out, it was hard because we shake our kids' hands every morning at the door and greet them by name. And then one day we're shaking hands. The next day now we're fist pumping. Now the next day we're doing the elbow. And then the last day before we called school off, we weren't even talking. And you don't realize how often you touch the kids until you can't touch them and give them hugs. And they're confused as to why I give you a hug every day and now I can't do it.
Right. So here's the question I have for you, Diana. What does a post-COVID-19 look like? I just got a headline out of Daily Mail. It said, Europe struggles to exit lockdown. Germany sees rise in infections amid fears it may have to restrict freedoms again. And so they're saying that they may be in a second wave of this thing. You have here doctors going back and forth talking about what our new norm is going to be, at least until we get a vaccine, and then maybe even after that. And so when you talked about going from a handshake to a fist bump to, just a distance wave, do you envision going back to a classroom where everybody is in face masks and you have hand sanitizer dispensers, in every class and in the hallway and by the water fountains. And what do you see?
It's just so hard because, like, elementary schools are already a breeding ground for germs. So at this phenomenon it's like, I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't see how we're going to keep, a mask on a 5-year-old all day. How can I hear a 5-year-old speaking with this mask on their face? I think we're definitely in the process of planning for a potential distance learning launch for the fall, unfortunately, just a worst case scenario. But I think for me, the thing at the top of mind is how we're going to support our kids and family about this trauma. And I don't know how familiar you all are with ACEs, but essentially it's a trauma assessment that lists a certain number of questions, and based on the responses, you can determine a student's trauma level. And they just announced that COVID-19 is an additional trauma. And so it's I'm working with my social worker to think about what support can we give to our students that have faced this trauma in the most ideal situations, right? They have parents at home, everything, but even for the less than ideal. So my students that are in shelters, or my students that are in domestic violence shelter, or things like that. So it's just a lot to think about. It's been great, but I got 2 minutes. I got to start my next lesson. But yeah, it's a great conversation to have. We just all got to be innovative. You want to give a share?
Real quick, they should look more into some PTS techniques for these children to deal with the trauma.
Definitely. Definitely.
Well, Diana, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Nice meeting you, Diana. You look just like your mother, only a little younger.
You know what, Vincent?
Yeah, she could be like your baby sister.
She's supposed to. If she looked like somebody else, I would be concerned.
More like your husband would be concerned. It'd be more like a Maury show.
So on to before we flush this episode down the toilet. Bring Maury up. All right. When we look at 3.8%, no, what 3.8 million people unemployment, right?
Yeah.
The unemployment numbers now are up to what?
60,489,000.
That's just in the United States?
No, that's nationwide. We're looking at 4.7 million in the state of New Jersey.
Wow.
Right,
wow.
60 million, right? And now you're talking Europe maybe seeing a second wave of this as they were trying to open up. You have our economy trying to open up because there's just a reality that, these stimulus packages are for short term. And that's why I don't call it a stimulus. That's why I keep calling it a disaster relief, because it's for short term. But if they're looking at a much longer term thing, we're not set up to be able to accommodate it, right? And we're really looking at something disastrous. So go ahead.
Have you ever thought about maybe there is a way to open up business but not open up physically, like a storefront, restaurant front? Like, with the restaurants now, they're doing takeout only,
so
limited.
Let me give you an example. I'm going to give you an example. This is a real life example. We were looking at going into some farmers markets this summer, right? This spring and summer, and some festivals. Well, because social distancing and all that other kind of stuff, a lot of farmers markets just kind of folded up tent and said, we're not going to do it. There are a couple that are trying to figure it out. And we were on the phone last night for 3 hours with one farmer's market where they had their vendors all trying to figure this out, Diane. And one of the ideas that they came up with was, which I didn't think would work, was they said, well, we're going to put people in a caravan. And so all of the vendors would be there. And we're going to create some sort of technology, some sort of a website where all of the vendors' products are there. and they'll have an inventory list. You could go to that site and you would be able to order whatever it is you wanted, right? Then you would show up at the farmer's market in your car, not getting out, and then the different vendors, based on your license plate number that you registered with, would see your car and then come to your car and bring you your product. I'm saying to myself, that's crazy.
Okay, so what about the traditional setup of the vendors and everybody has a tent as opposed to open air space? Now everybody's in a tent. You have one vendor, the products, and they come to the table as they would anyway.
No,
and
because you're talking about how do you, and again, I'm just using this as an example to show you what other industries are doing, right? So as we're talking about this, just imagine the restaurant industry, or imagine the malls, or imagine any other business trying to figure it out, right? So, you know, you're not asking questions, logistical questions. How do you maintain social distancing? How do you make sure that everybody's wearing a mask? How do you, are you all of those factors come into play? How do you make sure people are wearing gloves? You're giving product and you're taking money. What's really happening in that? It's like a petri dish. No matter where you have people gathering, because we're not doing testing, we're not doing any of these things, right? It's a petri dish. You gotta imagine that in whatever gathering that might be, you may have 50% of the people who have COVID-19.
So this is what I'm saying. If we're doing this, if we follow the model of the grocery stores, where they let in a certain amount of people, you have to stand a certain amount of feet away from each other, and they usher you to line or whatever, and they just keep it, like, for instance, Kings and I believe it's Short Hills, they have it so they direct you up and down the aisles. You can't go back and forth and crisscross. There's a direction in which you can go. Right. When they have, like, at the Jacob Javits Center, when they have their vendors and their big shows, they kind of can push you through certain aisles in a certain direction, so they keep the traffic flowing.
Right, and that's something that they're considering. What they're also trying to do is recognize that when people go to a farmer's market, there's a particular kind of experience that you're used to having, right? And to the degree that you cannot interrupt that experience, which is why people want to go to farmers markets, you want to try to do it. One of the things that I had suggested to them, and I think that they're considering this, is to have what would be a pickup tent, right? Where you have a box, and so what you're doing is you're filling your cart on their website, right? And so as the cart is being filled, each vendor who is a part of that particular farmer's market, you're getting notifications that people are ordering whatever it is you're selling, right? And then as they're ordering these things, then what you're doing is you're putting it in that person's cart. I told the operators of the farmer's market, I said, on the back end, you would have to hire somebody or a couple people who are actually filling the physical cart, right? Because the electronic cart is being filled here, but at the end, when the person checks out, there's a receipt of what's in that electronic cart. Now there has to be somebody who fills that cart or that box, and then that box is at a checkout tent. That person comes, so if Diane, if you went and you did that, right, you would then go to that checkout tent. Your box would be there that had everything in it that you ordered, right? You would be able to quickly go through to make sure that you had everything you want, and then you'd be gone because you would have paid online, right? So you don't even have to pay there. You do it through Cash App, Venmo, whatever.
So exchange your money.
And then so you're not even exchanging money, and then you're out.
Well, that's the same way you shopping online.
Yeah.
When you go to the grocery store, like ShopRite, you shop online, they pick it, you go pick it up, or they deliver.
That's what I suggested. But not the delivery piece. Although they could add, that would be very interesting, right? If they could partner with one of the delivery services, and then maybe
Uber Eats.
And then maybe you could have it delivered.
Now the only thing is, the product would have to be at the farmer's market, which means all the vendors would have to then bring their stuff to the farmer's market in adequate amount to be sold at the location.
Well, so the idea is this, that the way that this particular technology, so if you guys know anybody who is operating a farmer's market, this is just one conversation, right, that's happening amongst thousands or tens of thousands of conversations across dozens of industries. But in this particular case, what they're saying is that there would be a checkout time for each vendor to indicate what their inventory was going to be, right? So, if I was, providing 27, of this and 200 of that and 400 of that, that's what would be available. So when you went to go shopping at the thing, you would go ahead and order them. And as you ordered 1 or 2 or 5, it would then show that there are fewer left to be ordered, right? And so now somebody might come and then it says sold out. So when it's sold out, it's sold out. But so now the vendor is going to show up at the physical location with the actual product that was sold, right? The inventory that they said they had available. And now you're picking and packing.
So would you do that in a 1-day process or a 2-day process? Because my thing with that would be then for the vendors to come drop off stuff so they're not overexposing themselves with other people, is the vendors also have a time slot when they come and drop off their products.
Well, no. So the vendor would be there. But again, understand this. You have a tremendous amount of social distancing now, right? Because if all you have are vendors there, the vendors are more than 6 feet apart from one another. Right, and then all you're doing is picking and packing, and so you have an inventory sheet.
Okay. I got you. Right? So you got one person that's picking and packing, walking through, and the vendors are just still standing there with the product.
That's absolutely correct. So you're picking and packing based on this order sheet, and then you're delivering it to that checkout location, where Diane now goes to that checkout location to retrieve her box.
At that time.
Right? And so, and
smooth deal.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was
the thing that I think that would be a great business now. Whoever makes those conveyor belts, elevator type things, just they have the portable ones. You know what I'm saying? Because I've seen them at some places out at they have them at the farms. The portable conveyor belts. And it just goes past every vendor, and you just put it on there, and that eliminates, and then you just have one person at the end that packs it. I'm just saying.
So well, you know what would also be a good business, and I put this in my thing. People, not necessarily a good business, but this is turning into a nice time for me. Other people are suffering, and I understand that, but my skill set is becoming more and more valuable to people. Because I can offer that kind of input from a logistics standpoint, as a certified project manager and as a marketing expert to be able to help businesses. And that's something else that I put up on my page where I said, if you're a business and you're trying to work this stuff out, you're trying to figure it all out and still be competitive, if you don't have a marketing professional, chances are you're screwed. And that's just the reality. And so now look, this is what I'll say, because some marketing people, you might be able to get them on the cheap. But if you can't, maybe you can pool your money with other businesses that are in the same space that you're in.
Yes, that would make sense.
Right? So in the same industry.
All of your retail stores who sell shoes or clothes, all of y'all put some money into the pool and hire a marketing specialist to tell you what to do and how to advance your business, even if it's taking it from storefront to online.
That's absolutely correct, Diane. That's absolutely correct. And so can you imagine? So I'm working with this one particular farmer's market, right? But let's say that this particular farmer's market was, had created, a network with other farmers markets. And so we were all on Zoom, right? And then we were pouring all of our ideas into the middle of the table, coming out with a solution. Well, now all of those different farmers markets get the benefit in the end, right? And then I just get one check.
Okay, so let's do it. Let's do a model. Beauticians and barbershops. What could they do? How is that going to work? Because they are direct one-on-one with clients on a regular. What is it they can do that maybe they can pivot towards product selling, pivot towards home education shows, videos and stuff, so they can still generate some type of money, cash flow, until they can get back into the shop. Because, for instance, I spoke to my hairstylist and I said, I think I want to color my hair. And I said, what do you recommend store bought? She was like, I can't recommend any of that stuff. She said, because none of it is good for your hair.
Well,
so
I think that when you're dealing with a business like that, what's going to have to happen, and I think you can do it safely, right, relatively. I think that you can't, if you're a salon, you can be in business, but you're not going to have the same robust business. Your business is going to be pared down, I'm imagining. So if you, let's look at it like this, Diane. You're going to have the same one-to-one contact that a frontline person has dealing with a COVID-19 patient, right? A nurse, a doctor, or whatever. And so I would say, firstly, you would want to dress just like the doctors and the nurses. So you'd want to have the face guard, you want to have the face mask, you'd want to have the gloves, you'd want to have all that equipment on. And even an outer garment that you can discard when you're done, so that you don't have on your street clothes, the virus, the possible virus, right? So you want to do that. To the degree that you can have your client wearing a face mask, and I think that for hair salons, they can wear them all the time because it doesn't disrupt the stylist from being able to do the hair. I think with a barber it's different, and we have Farrakhan on, and Farrakhan was talking about how to do beards. Maybe you just don't do beards right now, but you could do haircuts.
Well, what I'm not going to say the person's name, her salon is doing is that they're making money because they have, as Diane said, the hair color. A lot of salons use a formula for each client. So what they've done was packaged the formula. The client picks it up, a distance-less, curbside pickup. And they do Zoom and showing them how to apply it, some little techniques that they can. If they, need to do a little trim, show them how to trim their edges. And they're doing not great as they did as a salon, but they're surviving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that part of the challenge, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do that, but here's what I would be saying, just honestly, from a marketing standpoint, is you want to recognize that this is temporary. It's not long term. I mean, it's not forever, or we hope it's not forever, right? So if it's temporary, you want to create temporary solutions. You don't want to create solutions that are going to ultimately put you out of business. So if you go and you create these formulas and you create these how-to videos and you create all that kind of stuff, then you're empowering, because look, the reality is this. The average person, if they wanted to, they could learn how to cut their hair, they could learn how to color their hair, they could learn how to do all those things. What they choose to do, and a lot of it is luxury, right, is they spend the money to go and sit and have somebody else do it for them. You want them to continue to understand that that's work and that they would rather be at a salon. And so to the degree that you're giving them some tips, if you're giving them, you don't want to tip that scale too much where that lifelong client of yours all of a sudden becomes your competitor because they're doing their own hair.
Correct, but they will never, ever match that level of professionalism as a salon, nor do they get that interaction. It's a temporary solution to, one, get someone to look, relatively decent in a COVID-19 environment, and give the salon an opportunity to make a couple of coins.
Yeah, I would just be...
But think about it, Eric. You went to beauty school, you said. Doing a rod set and doing a roller set is not easy. It takes time to perfect it. So that's not something that you can really teach somebody via video and they'll get it right. It'll take them a long time to master it.
Listen, I used to watch my grandmother, who's now 97 years old. She used to set her hair. She had the dryer in the house, right? She used to set her hair. She never went to a beauty salon. And she was always on point.
Well,
hey, Grandma.
I do. I do the same thing. You've called me on many occasions, and I'm like, I'm sitting under the dryer. So, it really doesn't matter. I think those that are going to go to the salons are looking forward to going back to that, because it's not just doing your hair. It's that personal me time of giving back to yourself, relaxation, talking with the ladies and the guys, talking with the guys. So I don't think they're going to lose that business, but I think at some point, the beauticians and barbers have to be able to pivot, like we've talked about before, to still generate some type of income, because they got mortgages to pay. They still have bills that they're paying, and that while their income was just on doing hair and not selling products, shampoos, conditioners and stuff like that, then they could be at the downfall of this as well. So we said barbers and hair salon. So what would you say, and we talked about briefly about retail business, about how to take it from the storefront to online. What about whatever businesses do we have that you would have to have the hands on? Let me think. I'm thinking of my clients and stuff. What about simple landscapers? They should be doing well right now. Landscapers, gardeners.
Well, no, they're
that.
not. In fact, a lot of them aren't doing well because there's no disposable income. So think about it, Diane. The people who were paying these landscapers are unemployed right now. So
I know mine is. Well, at least with mine, because I've got the disposable time, so I go out and mow my own lawn.
Right. So between not having the disposable income now and having the available time to do it yourself, and because people are suffering from cabin fever, right? So getting out and getting some fresh air, smelling that cut grass, doing those kinds of things. And then once again, I'm telling you, what is bound to happen in some respects is when this thing resolves, you'll have some people go, I was pretty good at doing my own lawn. I was pretty good at doing my own gardening. Why am I going to pay? I could take that money that I was paying over there and I can now use it for something else. And so those landscapers are going to...
You're right in theory, Eric, but then when this thing is over, I'm not going to have time to do my own lawn. Just like right now, my wife has time and she knows how to do my daughter's hair, but she's looking forward to that time where, no, we're going to go and we're going to hit the salon.
Right, but I'm not thinking anecdotally, right? I'm thinking generally, right? So yes, there will be some individuals who your time is worth more than the lawn, right? But you'll have some people who will look post-COVID-19, because they're going to be in such, because right now, Vincent, you still have your business. There's some people who are unemployed. There's some people who are not collecting that stimulus check. There's some people who can't pay their mortgage. Those people are the ones that I'm talking about who are going to have to try to figure out how to, scrape every nickel together that they can moving forward. And so that nickel that they're paying to that landscaper, right, they're now going to look and say, you know what? That's one more nickel I can keep in my coin jar. I don't have to give that to the landscaper now. And yes, it may extend their days once they go back to work, right? But that's going to become their job now to do the lawn. Because, hey, honey, guess what? We can't afford to pay the landscaper. Hey, honey.
Well, right now, Eric, I still have my business. But the reality is that my business is only generating 30% of its revenue. So no, that still comes into play. The economic, you're right about the economic value of it, but in all honesty, I can make more money per hour when it's over than the hour and a half it takes me to, landscape, an acre and a half.
But again, that's anecdotal, right? Because when you look at the majority of people who are making $7.25 an hour part-time, right? I mean, full-time job, right? Maybe they can't. Maybe hourly, that's a better deal for them to spend those hours doing that. I don't know. But the point that I'm making is,
suggest for landscapers, because I spoke to a friend yesterday, and she knows a person who is a garden professional, and she's a professional at doing planting flowers and doing that kind of stuff. And she does that as a profession. Now she's pivoting to consulting over the phone for a fee, and all you do is send her a picture of your lawn or your yard and you tell her what you're looking for, and she tells you the flowers to go buy, what to do, and all of that.
So you can do some of that, but that's challenging too. You can go to YouTube. I did that the other day. I went to YouTube to figure out, what the acidity of my soil needs to be to plant my tomatoes, right? I went to YouTube to figure out where I should go. And did you know, if you're gonna plant potatoes, well, first you don't plant seeds. You take the actual potato and you plant it. But when you plant, you don't want to get you don't want to get the potatoes that are sprayed with pesticides, because you want them to bud, right? And if they're sprayed with pesticides, you won't get the budding and the flowering. But the budding and the flowering is what you want to grow as your next potato, right? Plant. And so you go to Whole Foods and other places where you can get organic potatoes, and those are the ones that you want to plant. But I found that out. I went to YouTube. So I could go call a consultant, or I can go to YouTube, and the videos got 500,000 views, and I go, okay, that video is probably pretty cool. But what you can do,
there's people that will do YouTube. There are people who still have disposable money and will not do YouTube.
Right. So
how can a landscaper or whomever?
Well, but she's got to. So your friend, for instance, has to compete with YouTube, because at some point, as this thing drags on, even those who have disposable income now, they're going to be looking down the future and say, maybe I should be squirreling that money away. So she's got to differentiate herself in some other way, right? That's what it really comes down to. Like, how do you find something in this space that nobody else is doing? But if I'm doing what everybody else is doing, then it's just a commodity, right? And if it's a commodity, then what's happening? Then you got the consumer always looking to pay less.
Correct. And in terms of business.
In terms of business. So once you flip and realize that you're a commodity and not a brand, right? Then people are always looking to figure out how to pay less. So the trick to everybody, I would say, start there. Try to stay out of that commodity pool. Right?
Correct. But changing yourself from a commodity to a brand is as we talked about earlier, it's marketing.
It is marketing. Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes. It's marketing, it's product service, and it's the ability to deliver something that the competitors are not doing. That's what exemplifies your brand.
So what marketing tips do you have for the small business owner that they can do using social media? What should they do? What should they not do? And which social media platforms should they be on, depending on the industry?
Well, the toughest one to be on, and everybody gravitates toward it simply because Mark Zuckerberg talks about the nearly 2 billion people who are on the platform. But recognize, there's a lot of noise, a lot of traffic on Facebook, right? So there are a lot of eyeballs, but there are a lot of advertisers competing for those eyeballs. And if you are a small fish, then realize you're a small fish in a massive pond, right? And so, you're $20 or $50 to run a Facebook boost or advertisement, isn't going to yield a tremendous amount. I would, if I could, it depends on what the budget is, Diane. And so actually I had a business meeting this morning, right, with my business partners about how we're going to market and what made sense for us. But you have to do cost benefit analyses, right? You have to figure out, what's it going to cost me to advertise? What am I going to yield from that, advertisement investment? But what I would say is integrative advertising, where there's a mixture, retargeting if you can afford to do it. And what retargeting is simple, right? You ever go and look at a website and then you go to your Facebook page and you see that same product show up in your feed? Or you go to YouTube and all of a sudden they're showing what's called a pre-roll, right? So it's the thing that comes on before the video that you want to watch, that you always skip past as soon as the 15 seconds go by, right? That pre-roll is also retargeting, right? Because they drop a pixel, and I don't want to get too technical, but they drop a pixel when you go to visit a website, and then whenever your IP address is pinged, then what they do is they retarget certain kinds of ads to you. YouTube for the pre-roll, if you can do it, retargeting is a must if you can get to it, because the more you're in that prospective customer's face, the better it is for you. You want a lot of impressions. And then, you know what, Diane, I'm telling you, old school, because you're home anyway, right? Cold calls. You know, if you can afford it, email is always good, right? Because you could target emails. You can track emails in different ways that you can't do some of the other stuff. You know, click rates, open rates. You could see where people went to. There's a lot. Spend some time working on your website. Take your website from being what I call a brochure, like an electronic brochure, because it collects no marketing data, and turn it into a true marketing tool, right? Where you're collecting information from people who are visiting your website, right? So those are some of the tips that I would give them. And you can you can learn now. You can go. There's a YouTube video. I learned how to use WordPress. What is the? Give me a second, because I'm gonna give it to you guys. Hold on. I wanted to give it to you. There is a third-party software within WordPress, Diane, that is a WYSIWYG, which means what you see is what you get. So it's all very graphic in nature in terms of using it. I can't find it right now in my bookmarks, but when I do locate it, I'll let you guys know what it is. But learn WordPress.
True. But I have to say, Eric, cold calling for me, I mean, I'm an old school marketing guy. Cold calling has always been the best way. It's interactive. You're talking with a person face to face rather than them going. But, we run into people in their busy life, but that busyness is now stopped. So cold calling can increase your business exponentially.
And guess what, Vincent? People are home. People are home.
Everybody's home.
Yeah, everybody's home. You got a captive audience.
That's right.
Elementor. That is the third party software, guys, for WordPress. It's called Elementor.
And what's the purpose of that? What would you use that for?
It's the tool within WordPress, right? So you launch WordPress, and then Elementor is free. You don't pay anything for it. And it's got over 2 million downloads, so everybody's using it. But what it allows you to do, Diane, is literally drag elements around on the page, because nobody wants to do coding, right? Although
coding is big money.
Coding is big money right now, right? And all those COBOL people, right, are being asked to come back to work because of the antiquated programming systems attached to unemployment. But anyway, if you don't want to do coding, and so you're a visual person, Elementor is a great tool. Some people are using Wix, but there are more people who are using WordPress, and so I suggest WordPress. I tried Wix. I didn't like it.
So, Eric, we talked about before, and this wasn't on it, but I just thought about it just now. We talked about the class, education and stuff. We talked about that happiness class. Remember I was telling you about it? We talked about it like a couple of years ago, that they were doing this happiness class at Harvard, and I asked you if you would take it, because now they're doing it free online, and you said nope.
See my book, Diane? What does it say?
No,
it says
can't see it.
It says resisting happiness.
He's just not trying to be happy.
You see my book? It says resisting happiness.
So anybody who wants to take it, Harvard is offering a free 10-week online class, happiness class.
Eric, could you post on your thread the Elementor? Somebody's requesting it.
Oh, absolutely, I will. And then, you know what? Well, let me tell you. So I'm not resisting happiness. The book is actually called, and it was given to me by a good friend of mine. It says a true story about why we sabotage ourselves, feel overwhelmed, set aside our dreams, and lack the courage to simply be ourselves, and how to start choosing happiness again. So it's not that I am resisting happiness. It talks about why we resist happiness, right? So,
Fear.
and listen, the other thing that we can do now,
also
guys,
the belief that you don't deserve it.
yeah. The other thing that we can do now, Diane, for small businesses. So for the person who asked me to post a link to Elementor, I'm happy to do that. But we can create small groups, right, of people around common interests. So I'm working on building my website, and I'm working with Elementor. I'm going to pass that on to you, right? I've gotten a certain distance in my understanding of it. Maybe there's some things that I can help you understand so that you don't have to go through some of the pitfalls I went through. Maybe there's somebody who's listening to the show who's more advanced in Elementor and WordPress than I am, right? And so maybe we can all collaborate, right, and build networks. So there's something else that we can do.
Absolutely. What else is on the agenda? We got 28 minutes.
Okay, well, President Trump is blaming China because he says they'll do anything to make him lose re-election.
Well, then we need whatever.
Well,
open up Chinese restaurants again so they can give out fortune cookies. That's it.
Well,
I don't.
Well, see, so the thing that I just posted that talked about 100 incidents a day, right, against Asian people, right? And so now you've got Donald Trump once again
targeting them.
Yeah, fueling those flames. This is ridiculous.
So there was
So tell the person that I just put the link to Elementor
it's
in the feed. There's a video. It's a tutorial. Watch it. You'll love it. Please, if you like the stuff that we put in the feed, that reference materials and stuff, let us know.
Okay. There's an article I saw on Bloomberg that they talked about rent is going to be due again, and missing payments have landlords worrying. Because we talked about this initially when the gentleman came on, and they were talking about the movement for renters.
Right.
The rents need to be eliminated or postponed or suspended. And while he's saying that, I'm saying on the other end, well, my mortgage is not being postponed or suspended. Even though they're saying that many mortgage companies, if you're backed by a particular bank, have sat at the table and had these conversations. However, many of us know that when you go in and purchase your home, you may start with one mortgage company. They may sell it to another bank. They may sell it to another one. They may sell it to another mortgage servicing company. And those servicing companies have not had a conversation at the table, and they have not said in any way that they would suspend, postpone, or forbear your mortgage. So, we're all trying to figure out, where is this going to go? How big is this going to get? And they said, from the article, they said 69% of renters have made full or partial payments during the first week of April, according to the National Multifamily Housing Council, which is a group for apartment industry. By April 26th, the figure had climbed to nearly 92%. But they're concerned, as they're very nervous as to what's going to happen in the month of May. And moving forward, what's going to happen, especially when that $1,200 stimulus, so-called stimulus, was given, really doesn't cover many people's rents or mortgages.
True. This is the side effects of trickle-down economics. You're looking at a little over $1.3 trillion that went to large corporations, which a lot of it include mortgage groups and people who, buy those notes in bulk. So we're talking about people who buy, let's say, $1 billion in mortgage bulk, and they're getting the relief, but they're not passing that relief down to the mortgage owner. And if you're like me and you, Diane, we're landlords as well. So they're not giving us a break on our mortgage. So we feel like, okay, and we should absorb that and give the breaks to our tenants. That's trickonomics. That's the trickle down going bad. And the biggest part is that it's a lot of corporate greed and those billions and trillions of dollars that they're getting. Yet they're not breaking that down to the smaller person and the end users. So the landlord and the tenant are now caught in the middle, where we were looking for the government to step up and provide solutions, and their solutions did not help. The cure was worse than the disease.
So, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So in New York, they are planning a rent to withhold their rent for the month of May. And they're joining, some people are talking about they're going to join the rent strike to pressure Governor Cuomo into forgiving monthly payments during this time, COVID-19, because getting stuck with a big bill for back rent at the end of the crisis is impossible and unattainable for many people. So if they start this rent strike, it will soon quickly spread across the tunnel, through the tunnel and across the bridges to New Jersey, landing right in the city of Newark. What is a solution, and how can this be fixed or stabilized?
They're gonna have to bail. Listen. So here's the deal, right? The government has to say, like they said about banks when they said they were too big to fail. They have to say that the American people are too important to fail, right? And then once they take that position, Diane, then they will come up with appropriate remedies. Right now, what they're doing is putting Flintstone Band-Aids on severe wounds, right? And the Band-Aids just are not good enough. But they have to get to that point. Listen, here's what I want to ask the question. At the point, and it's going to happen, right? Once renters become more emboldened, because that's what it's going to take, right? They just see right now, a lot of renters are scared, right? They don't know what's going to happen. But then that fear is going to turn to anger, and then they're going to become more emboldened. They're going to say, "What the hell are you going to do anyway?" Think about it. Think about if all of the renters went on strike and didn't pay their rent. Who's going to kick them out?
That's right.
If we talked about the hospital infrastructure, the medical infrastructure collapsing with the number of possible COVID-19 patients needing to get into the emergency room, can you imagine what the court system is going to have to deal with now? You're going to talk about all these evictions. Who's going to handle all of that? It's not going to happen. And as soon as they recognize that and they all pile onto it, it's a wrap. And then beyond that, in this environment, what is the landlord gonna do? So now you're going, even if you did evict that person, you're not gonna get anybody else in there anyway. So now you're gonna have a vacancy. Call or go.
Well, one suggestion is that that back rent be basically broken down once the economy gets back in shape with the tenants. Once you take that back rent that is due and you adjust it over a period of months. So instead of their rent being $200 a month, it's $225.
But wait a minute, but you know what? That's ridiculous. You're not going to be able to do that. That's because what that's going to be like. Right, because the renter, I understand what you're saying in theory, but here is the practical application of it. That renter, when he or she goes back to work, is starting at zero. Right? And they're starting at zero with a rent hike. You understand what I'm saying? Because their rent was already, let's say, $1,000 a month, and they were barely paying that when they were working 2.5 jobs. Now they're starting at zero. And their rent, because you want to now space whatever the back rent is over whatever period of time. So let's say that's another $200 a month. So now their rent, which was $1,000 that they couldn't pay before, is now $1,200 a month, and they got less now than they did before. Let's take this caller. Caller, go.
Excuse me. Good morning, you guys. First and foremost, I don't want to say the angle that you're saying it from is like this doomsday scenario, but the reality is, once courts open back up and people can be evicted, it means society is opening back up. People will work again. So people will get evicted, or maybe they have a decent relationship with their landlord. They can work something out. But like Vince said, no, you can. Well, he was saying differently, but like you said, Eric, no, you can't ask a tenant to start paying a little additional more per month, then most of them will probably already maxed out as possible already. Mm-hmm. So that's not going to work. And so who's going to, it's simply going to be, if you cannot pay, depending on your landlord, you're going to get evicted. And because you can't back end it because it's a lease, and leases are short, right? A lease is only a year. It's not like your mortgage where they can extend your mortgage. You don't extend your lease, right, so that you can pay off that debt, right? So you're not going to have that option. In the end, you got to realize that when the courts open back up, it means society is opening back up. These jobs will come back.
No, they won't.
Because you have to. Let me say why. I'm going to tell you why. The jobs that people are losing are jobs that are needed when people are thriving. See, these are not, so because they're needed when they're thriving, they will come back. Now, there are certain jobs, of course, not every business is going to reopen, but then its competition might grow, and they might need more employees. But in the end, okay, you will have the same numbers of employment over a period of time. Now, I'm not saying 1 month. Maybe it'll take a year. Maybe it'll take 2. I don't know. I can't give you that answer. I'm not that kind of.
Well, you're talking about.
But I do know 90% of the people that lost their job will find another job either in the same field or another menial labor field that anybody can get the job in. They're coming back.
Farrakhan, I think you're being optimistic. I think, for one, many jobs will come back. There will be a large amount of businesses that will close and never reopen. But also, because there will be a flood of more employees than there are job vacancies, those salaries will not be as high as they were before, because now the employer has the upper hand. Because he has
but Diane, have you done the analysis of what jobs are being lost? See, you're going under you're saying high-paying jobs. Half the people that lost their jobs are the low-paying jobs.
Right.
Correct. These are not the high-end demand. They're not the jobs that require high level of education. They're not the jobs that you're talking about.
So you're talking about more of the entry-level positions.
Essentially, that's who got fired. Because the people with high levels, they're working from home. Right? Those office people that have, that are truly in demand, they're working from home. They haven't lost their jobs. It's the ones on the front line workers, essentially it's Main Street workers. Okay? It's the people in those small stores. That's who's filing for unemployment. It's not, HelloFresh is hiring. Amazon is hiring. Their businesses are in demand. Their type of jobs are in demand.
Supermarkets are hiring.
Right? Yeah. With all of this, the things that aren't hiring are the small businesses that were, teetering anyway. So they're closed because Main Street is closed. Right? But corporate America is still rocking out. They're rocking out. They got people working from home. They have their people working from.
I'm gonna answer that in a second, Farrakhan. I'm gonna address that in a second. We got another caller. Caller, go.
Okay. I'm gonna sit back and listen.
Caller? Oh, did the other caller hang up?
Oh.
No, they're on. I don't know where they are, but I see that I still have them online. But there is an article, and I'm gonna post the article, that talks about, and it'd be great, and we'll address this next Tuesday when we have Deidre on, talk about the place, because she's talking about the fact that she has jobs too.
Right.
But
and we get ready for Eric's interview.
This is a very difficult time to kind of wrap your head around how we move forward positively for everybody, because there will be, again, people who will be left behind, whether it's the renters, whether it's the homeowners, whether it's not going to be the mortgage companies, it won't be the banks. But I think, like you said, Eric, there has to be a simple, single focus interest where we all, homeowners, renters, because I'm also a renter because I rent my office space, we have to work together to give them the solution on how we need to move forward. And canceling mortgages while not upheaving the mortgage system is one way to do it. But like we talked about before, if the interest rates that you're paying on your house. If you buy a house for $135 and you're paying double that price of the house to pay off the mortgage, then there has to be somewhere in there where they pull out that money of that interest and say, look, this has to be forgiven because we have to move forward so that we can have payments that come in so people can continue to have somewhere to live. Otherwise, we're going to have a band of communities where people are not paying mortgages, not paying rent, and we're all going to be called, what do you call them when you just move into a house and you don't pay anything? What do you call it, Vincent?
A squatter?
A squatter. We all going to be squatters because what you're not going to do is put me out my house.
Right. And
because everybody is now armed with guns, you really ain't putting me out the house. So at some point, the sheriff office and the courts are going to be like, look, we got to find a better way because this is not going to go well.
And it's very immoral. And with my real estate portfolio, 90% of the banks said, okay, what we're going to do is extend the term, and as long as this virus is in place and the economy is shut down, you will take care of that payment on the back end.
Right. So let me read some of, because I didn't want to read the whole article. I'll post the article. This came out of Forbes magazine. The headline is the coronavirus effect. Here are the jobs that will be added and lost. Right? It says the coronavirus has changed the job market almost overnight. The global outbreak has seriously impacted the economy and job security. It will have a long-lasting, game-changing ramification. There will be sectors, companies, and workers that will benefit from the near tragedy. Unfortunately, we will also witness industries that are severely and savagely harmed. People in these areas will lose their jobs and have extreme difficulty finding new ones. And then it goes on, it says, the big winners will be the online companies that don't rely upon brick and mortar locations, healthcare providers, supermarket chains, especially those with a robust online presence, pharmaceutical companies working on cures for disease, technology companies, and services such as Zoom that cater to people working from home. It says, I want to go down. It says, people working in, so it says global giants, giant corporations with enormous amounts of cash on their balance sheets like Amazon and Google, Apple, Microsoft, Netflix will have the clout to outlast the outbreak. It says department stores, malls, and specialty retailers will, please pause, mute your phone, will lose business and shed jobs as people are not leaving their homes. Big retailers such as Macy's, Nordstrom's, Bloomingdale's, Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, and Bergdorf Goodman have all announced that they are closing their stores. This will cause a large number of retail workers to lose their jobs. There are a number of other sectors in which the jobs will be savagely cut. Companies that are in the travel industry, airline, sporting events, concert, and restaurant sectors will be crushed. So I'm saying to you, I'm going to say to you again, I'm going to post the article, right? You can read the rest of it, but they're not coming back. Those are not coming back. And
that doom and gloom report is not 100% accurate. And we're talking about the opinion of one person or a quote-unquote expert that has some merit. There are jobs that are coming back, and there are companies that are going to close. And to be honest with you, in terms of job security in the African-American communities, there's no such species. Yes.
Okay. So moving forward, when we talk about what's happening in the world, and we already know they get a cold, we get the flu, pneumonia, COVID-19, we get it all. What we have to talk about is pivoting from where we are. Have to move forward together collectively. So even if that's going back to like Eric talked about, doing your own garden, creating your own, making your own tomatoes and selling that to the people on your block. Growing your own potatoes, whatever it needs to take to bring you back I guess, to nature and to help you grow with your family so that you're not starving, because we cannot continue to depend on these big corporations. Because like you said, Nordstrom's and all of these stores, Saks Avenue, are closing, but they're not closing for closing period. What they're doing is they'll have these super sales, and people will go out and buy this crap that they
That's right.
in the house, so they're not going to lose out. They still have inventory that they have to get rid of, so they'll do that.
And a lot of these large corporations are just pressing that, we're going to close, because they're pushing for that relief money, where they're getting billions.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing, and this is what I said before, when Chris Christie was pushing so hard for that ginormous shopping center and entertainment center in the Meadowlands, I said, this is a waste of money. They've been pouring money in for years trying to get it off and going. Now they got it up, and now it's closed. Did I not say that it would be closed? I didn't know it would be because of COVID-19, but I said it would be closed within 3 months.
You did. Call go.
And at 100%. They were still at like 3% open.
Caller?
Hey, no, I just wanted to say, Eric, after listening to like those list of companies that you just ran down, the Nordstroms, the Bergdorfs, the Saks, all of those companies, and I think it has something to do with what Vincent just said. There's that government money that they're going to get for the COVID, or saying that they're closing. All of those companies were closing anyway. Nordstrom's was closing stores. Saks, Berg, all of them were closing their stores. They had announced closings of stores and locations. It's just that now is the perfect time for them to do it. They can get government money for doing it now.
And dump their dead weight and get government money for it. You're right.
Like, that's what they're doing. And I guess what I'm calling about today is I'm taking the more optimistic view, like Diane said. I understand that most of what ground we're losing was the ground we were shaky on anyway, which is always that low ground, right? The high ground is still there, right? Again, it boils down to, like has been said in this conversation, should people have used this time to improve themselves, to improve their outlook? Most probably have. Most have just been on Facebook complaining all day, right? Instead of doing something so that when they come out of this, one or two steps better. And again, so that's people, right? And it's the fault of the people. You can't even blame, any larger, thing for that. It's just people. People don't get it. They have to do something themselves.
Correct. And as we said in the show last week, it's the difference between existing and surviving. And once we start going into the existing and waiting for somebody to hand us something and go into surviving, like Diane said, doing mowing your own lawn, your own hair, instead of you having filet mignon every night.
Right, but wait a minute. But we got it now. So see, this is again where me having this hat on reminds me to say, look, we have to talk about pre-existing conditions, right? So you want to ignore the pre-existing conditions of a community of people who are, and we talked about it, right? Whether whether they lack intellectual curiosity, whether they suffer from arrested development, whether they have socially transmitted diseases. So we can go down a list of all of those things that exist. Come on, we can't ignore those things and now say, oh, you know what? We just want you to be normal now. And so I'm saying to you that
Excuse me. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry for interrupting. I see the time about to end. I need y'all help. My name is Beatty. I need y'all help. Good morning, Eric. Good morning, Diane.
Good morning,
Favicon. I know it's a short notice. If y'all going to be on tomorrow, I would like to talk. I need y'all help. I see everybody talking about these hours and talking about lies. I live at 516 Bergen Street. It's a senior citizen building. They shut our building down because of the senior citizens with the COBRA. They're more easily to get attacked because of other illnesses since April the 2nd. Tuesday, they opened our building, y'all, as a testing site without letting people know that it was going to be a testing site. We were unaware that it was supposed to be a testing site just for the seniors at 516 Bourbon Street. It was a company, Sunny Up. So what they did, they put it in the people's mailboxes. The mayor shuts the city down on Monday. From 4 o'clock Friday, you got these signs saying that they're coming from a company outside, Sunrise. You must have a physician referral to be tested, medical, Medicare, and cash. It's supposed to be from 9 to 5 Tuesday. Now, a lot of people don't know because they mostly stay in because we got signs in our building that say high risk. Our percentage was supposed to be the lowest. What they did, they took hot spots, which I want everybody to be tested, but they had all North housing sites. People were burst in. When you got seniors living here, some of these families didn't know, some of the seniors didn't know.
Hey, Dee, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Because you and I spoke about this, right? And did you get a chance to talk to the reporter that I put you in touch with?
I did, but she spoke with housing, and they lied, and they told her this wasn't taking place. That's what made me call, because I was calling you.
Okay, so now wait a minute, Dee, because I want you to finish, but I want you to talk slowly and so that people can understand what's going on here. So Dee contacted me a couple days ago and told me about this issue that was happening at 516 Bergen Street, that it is a hot spot, and we know that seniors are in that group, in that risk group, right? And they have kind of been self-quarantined in that building. And if you have relatives in that building, you're not allowed to go in there and visit them. And what they did was they turned that building that's a hot spot into a testing center. So and then so when Dee called me and told me, I thought
hot spots. Eric, you mixed it up. This was our building with 10%. We the lowest. They put all the hot spots, every North housing site, everywhere that they put on the site that Raz and them said were hot spots.
Right.
All of these people were coming here being tested.
Okay, I'm sorry.
They didn't let us know.
Right. So
finish telling.
Right.
Go ahead.
So now all of these hot spots are being bussed into where these vulnerable seniors are.
Walking
right?
in and coming in.
And so now, so what I did was I reached out to the media and asked the media to follow up on this. And this is, I'll read you the text. So
wait, I want to tell y'all who I reached out in the agencies and what I did and was told. I called the health department because I figured that this was a health issue. I wanted them to come shut it down. You got seniors families didn't know because they could have got their families out for a few days. The young lady, her name is Nakia Smith. Me and her Friday, we in the hallway lobby from 4:30 to 10 at night. She says she's doing this. She's the director of Victor Carella's. She's his second hand. I asked her, I said, ma'am, you know, well, we thought it was just supposed to be our site being tested. I looked up, they snuck in another thing, and it's a red and white number paper say, North Housing. She looked at me. I said, I know the mayor isn't aware of this. She said, first of all, she said, I don't work for the mayor. She says, I'm doing this. And I said, what do you mean? I said, well, I said, I know the mayor wasn't aware of this because when they shut the building down April the 2nd, when I let them know that the strains, the intercoms and the phones hasn't been working for over 3 years, they were supposed to be having people knocking on the door shutting it. So I know the mayor's not aware of it. Don't you know, she says, the mayor's been aware of everything not working for 5 years. I've been working at Seth Boynton's for 10. I know, everybody know none of the site stuff been working for 5 years. I said, okay, so we got a safe zone here. You want to come in here on a Friday, put these papers up for people to give you service. Why y'all not using the health department? Why y'all not using JSK or the schools where people can go in here? Y'all putting their lives in danger. We live here. You seniors don't know what's going on. Y'all scared them. Look at that sign. How's this? They stay in their apartments. So you're going to open up. She said, I'm going to put the rope here. We're going to use the whole. I said, ma'am, this is airborne. You telling me, she said, only all North Housing Authority residents or state essential workers. Let me tell you something. We got like 180. It's 30 years our people know about it in this building and went down there and tested. I started seeing people I knew on the streets looking out the window because I was scared to death to go down there. I went down there early in the morning. People coming out with no mask. I said, excuse me, why y'all coming through the front? I thought y'all supposed to be coming through the side. Don't you know they had the name? I said, okay, the young lady told me, we see them two buses in. I called, why them buses? They said, oh no, they bought food. Oh,
Okay, Dee, people are saying that you need to calm down a little bit because they're trying to understand you and they're finding it difficult to understand.
Yeah, listen, what I'm saying is families don't know that Tuesday, because the mayor shuts the city down Monday. What they did Friday, these stuff went out in people's mailbox after 4. So what they're saying, this company outside Sunrise is supposed to be coming in. Now, the next day, Saturday, North Calvin sign go up saying, Friday evening, going up saying all residents. So the lady is here putting the blue tape down. Her name Nakira Smith. And I'm asking her, why y'all doing this? Why y'all didn't let people's families know they can get them out of here for a few days? She says at 5 o'clock, after it's over with everybody, they're going to fumigate. The fire department got heads up already. They're going to fumigate our building. Don't y'all know? They didn't fumigate anything. That's what they did. They only cleaned the first floor. So I reached out to the health department. I got to the director's office. I spoke with the Trinita Council. She told me the whole bunch is going to put the MD on. She put the lady named Felicia Woods on. They said there's nothing they can do. I said there's nothing they can do in the seniors. Who's speaking for the seniors? She said she's going to send out a task force, a health department task force. She asked me for my name and my number. I gave it. Nobody ever came on. I called the mayor's office. The young lady picks up. I said, hello, excuse me. I believe I had the wrong number. Is this the mayor's office? She said, yes. I said, oh, wow. I was looking for, North Mayor's office. She said, well, what it is. I explained it to her. And she said, it ain't nothing we can do. I said, there's nothing you can do. But can you connect me to the mayor's second? And she hung up. I called back. She picked up. There's nothing we can do. I called back. They sent me to the voicemail. I called the Deputy Commissioner of Health Department, 609 up in Trenton. I spoke with a lady. I didn't get a name. That's the first time I didn't get the name. She told me 7:45 in the morning. I got the time to log in my phone. She said, ma'am, we don't know about this. She said, let have somebody look into this. We're going to get back to you. I had my sister and a few people, I called her because she's the Southmore, work for John James. He said, no, it's supposed to be this yard site. No, it's open. I see a friend of mine now, lives in Pilgrim Village. She walking in. Make a long story short, she contacted the mayor. He said, no, it's supposed to be for on site. This is around maybe 3:30-ish. And he said, no, I'm thinking he's going to come shut it down. Nobody shut it down. It went to 5 o'clock, and I've been calling for help. I want the families to know. I want the people to know. Nobody's helping. I don't want this pushed under the rug. I left messages at different agencies. I want something done. What they just did now, you might as well open the building and let their family come.
So, Dee, what I've just done is I've contacted she said you spoke with her this morning, the woman from the media that I put you in touch with.
Mary Ellen, and she said she contacted the director of housing, and
apparently they lied to her. Right, but apparently...
But guess what? They said the building was clean. I said, it's not. What I did April the 2nd, I took a picture of all the stains, everything. Our building is a shortage. It's not the manager's fault. They always do when the manager's not there. We only got 1 man working a day, 2 managers. The young lady, Nakisha Sykes, said to me, she's aware. I said, so you're aware that they need help and you haven't sent them no help? But yes, y'all gonna open this site and know it's dirty and had testing? Don't you know? They said it was clean. Y'all, but check it. Yesterday, they came to do just my floor, clean that floor. Don't you know? They didn't know the day before the 27th. I went and took pictures. I got the same stains that were on April the 2nd, the 27th. The mayor said he was going to send somebody to clean the building yesterday, and they said it was clean. Nobody came. This building needs to be fumigated. It's in the air. You put lives in danger. So the families can't come and check on their families. Only the home health aid and like the people that deliver the prescription, somebody had to come. Don't y'all know none of them be tested? The security guard was working here. She got scared. She didn't know. She thought it was just only going to be us testing. When she saw the 2 people, don't you know she's been called out for 3 days? They work in our building. Security guards, home health aides, nobody be tested. But yet, the mayor shut our building down, and all the nursing buildings, we don't mind. I don't mind. We wanted to be safe, but now y'all broke the safe code. Y'all made this a testing site, and now they're lying everybody, saying it was only supposed to be for residents and state essential workers. And I want to know what state essential workers came in and got tested. I called a lot of my friends that work for the state. None of them knew about it. They all want to know why did they have a test site in here with seniors living in it and we live here. So I didn't go out downstairs for 2 days because I'm scared because it's in the air. We all got our masks. Some of the seniors don't even know the test going on. I asked the guy, he said, what testing? Nobody told my mother because guess what? They all stay in their house They have food here in the doorway, giving out food to, I guess, the testing people. What is going on? And they go on a cover up. I remember when Sharp James and Corey was in office. If you go to the health department or you go to agencies, they get on it. Nobody made a move. What's going on?
Hmm.
Right. So the mayor said he wasn't aware that it's supposed to be all open. But when you go to the website, they put our building, Branchburg, and others saying this is testing sites. But you fool the people. You got two different paperwork up. Sunrise coming, cash only, cash, Medicaid. Where these seniors got to be paid to be tested, and the half of them didn't know they were supposed to be tested.
So let me ask you a question, Dee Dee. So this happened the other day, and are you saying that it's scheduled to occur again?
Go on the mayor's website. Y'all will be able to see the next day from Branchville Park. I reached out to you, Eric, and I reached out to Donna. Donna was supposed to be coming at 9. Donna never came. All I know, you had the lady, and that's what happened. I know Donna ended up calling me, saying she was at the doctor's office, and then about maybe 3:30, she texted and asked how many people was here. At this point, I never went downstairs because I am the type, y'all, that I cannot stand down there and allow these people to walk in my home. It's like you just walked in. Y'all kicked our door in and walked in and gave us a disease. This is serious.
Right.
People are dying.
Okay.
You can do this.
So
and then families running away. I wasn't aware. You told us it was going to be us.
Right. So what I'm gonna do is, again, I spoke out. So the reporter was somebody from Tap Into that I reached out to. And she said that she reached out to the Newark Housing Authority people and that they had told her that it was only going to be people in that building.
But she's meeting me. We're going to call. Me and her going to meet up at 3:30. I told her I had paperwork. Right. I got proof. I got this and this. So we going to meet up.
Right. So that's what she said to me, that you guys are going to get together and and she's going to get this information. And so now and I'm going to follow with her to make sure that the correct story is written regarding this and that we get some answers.
And I got tenants, y'all, down with me. Half of them are afraid because what's happening is if you say something, you get a cease letter. It was already gone in my way. But let me tell y'all this.
Yeah, but they don't need to.
I don't care. I value souls. People say, Dee Dee, why are you saying something? I did the first one. My mother died 3 years ago. I was worried. Seniors are hopeless. Their families don't come. I'm going knocking on the doors. I help them out. I don't know no other way. That's why the way I was raised. I'm going to help. I'm helping myself, and I'm helping them. But more so, these families don't know. I know they said. I just spoke with a young lady today. She said, what? She said, no, they didn't tell me that. They told me it's going to be. I told her. She said, are you serious? I said, I'm telling you. I gotta live in here. Okay. What is your mother? He said, what? He said, nobody told us. Right. So what's happening now? They're trying to rush it under the rug. They're trying to cover it up. But I got a few people down with me. I got documentations. I got everything. Okay. Other people as well. Okay. We need help.
Right. So
I know the governor's office would have never put nobody, no nurse, no seniors in harm's way, nor Governor Cuomo. They got different states. They would have opened up states. They told me we got to get a referral. My doctor is at the Newark Health Department.
Right.
So how can we get a referral on a Friday or for everybody for Tuesday when you come y'all supposed to see them on Monday? What's going on? And we didn't feel comfortable with an outside agency coming in. We don't know what Sunrise, but we were willing to do it. But now you open it up for everybody. So my thing is, why is the building locked down? You got security guard. We got our one. Plus we got another one with the guns. They open it up Tuesday. So why can't these people come visit their family? Because I know the governor wouldn't have been in agreement with this.
Right. So listen. So you're gonna follow up with Mary Ellen. Call us back, Dee Dee, and let us know what that is. I'm gonna reach out. You're meeting with her at 3:00?
3:30. Are y'all gonna be online tomorrow?
Yeah, we'll be online tomorrow.
Okay, I'll call y'all and give y'all the update tomorrow morning. Right. I'm trying to paper trail. I called all the agencies. I called everybody. I got everything down. Okay. Because I like to do a paper trail. But I don't want this to be brushed under the rug, but I feel like this should be federal attention. We need the feds up in here.
Oh, no.
Because I never saw nothing when nobody's not acting, and we need help. You can't put seniors' lives in danger when you close it down, and we had the lowest percentage of safetiness in this city, and you just open it up. So come on in and get them.
All right, we're going to follow up on it. So I look forward to you calling in tomorrow, Dee Dee. Thank you so much.
Thank you, y'all. I'm sorry for the interruption, how I did it, but I didn't know no other way.
Nope, appreciate it.
Not a problem.
We appreciate you.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, have a great day, everybody.
You too, Dee Dee.
Thank you.
So this is what I got to say before we close out. This is the beginning of a revolution. And residents of the city of Newark need to pay attention, and they better start working together.
But you know what? I saw what Munira put in the post, and I fear that she is correct.
Mm-hmm.
That in the end, you know, people are conditioned to settle for less. They want more as long as somebody else is willing to fight. And so all of those seniors now, we talked about it with the water. So Munira, I agree. I know we disagree on a lot of things, but I agree with you on this, Munira. We talked about it with the water. People didn't rise up. Diane, you said a revolution is coming. I for certain believed that once people realized that they were being lied to about the water, that there was going to be a revolution, that children, that young people were not going to allow their parents, their grandparents.
I think this is different, Eric, because you are physically watching numerous people die, as opposed to the water that's a slow death. You really don't see it. You may hear about the lead poisoning. You may know about the kids having it, but the kids are still moving. They still function. They still breathing. Diane, you are literally watching people drop off.
Diane, so but I want to say this to you. I agree with that. I agree that people are dying, but this is what I want to say to you. If that had happened to a building in Summit, New Jersey, if that had happened at the West Orange, at the Montclair House in Montclair, where those seniors are, which I consider like the Rolls Royce of senior citizen buildings. Like when I get old, I want to go to the Montclair House. but if it would have happened in those places, Diane, not only would you have those elderly people in there screaming and hollering, but you would have their children,
their family,
grandchildren, their family.
Well, no, what would happen is that all these high-end taxpayers and campaign contributors would have protests, which is why they never got any of those sites for testing anyway, because they knew the pushback they would have gotten from that. They took advantage of people who have no voice and very little power to stop them.
Well, you know what, though? But I disagree that they don't have a voice, Vincent. They choose not to exercise their voice. They got a voice. Listen, the Newark seniors are the most reliable voting bloc in Newark.
Yes, but they're voting for the same failed politicians.
No,
and suffering from the same failed ideology.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I only made that statement to underscore the point that they do have a voice, right? And every election day, they go out and they exercise that voice. And they vote against their interests.
Yeah.
And so what Munira said in the post, I fear is true. That they're going to go once again and vote against their interests. I pray not. I pray that they don't. But I'm not very hopeful given past elections. Anyway, Dee Dee, thank you so much for being on the front line of it. Let us know. I'm going to touch base with Mary Ellen, keep her on point in covering this. And then all of you guys, please share the show, and we'll report back to you about what's going on as the folks, our beloved seniors in 516 Bergen Street are under assault right now.
Absolutely.
Thanks for tuning in.
Stay safe. Stay safe and share the show.
Stay safe. God bless everyone.